Welcome back to Artists Highlighted. We are doing Jimin from BTS today, and I'm going to tell you the thing that I find most interesting about this particular episode is that, in a lot of senses, he truly is probably one that I find very similar to how I personally would like to write my own music in a lot of ways the most. Now, I have to be fair. The thing that I find most interesting is the fact of Jimin himself. I always really identified with when I first started listening to BTS. I was immediately just grabbed by Namjoon and Yoongi. Those were the ones that really stood out most, and mainly because one, their demeanor and the way that they handled situations really struck a chord with me. But as we get deeper on this channel with BTS content, I can't deny that as we go on, the more I kind of see what I wish to be in a lot of sense as a writer for music, and also how I've wished that this is the way that I wrote my music. I think the most important thing that I've learned about Jimin is like Yoongi. He's very aware of letting people into what he wants you to know and his struggles. And for example, the thing that I find really cool is, even though he doesn't quite have as much music as some of the people we have covered on the series, the thing that I really like is that it's potent and it's journalistic. It's like he's writing in a journal, like a public journal. And so I think the thing that's interesting is how the styles change as he is going throughout a different, I'd say, period of his life or struggle in his life. So of course, first and foremost, let's talk about it. And for me, I want to start first and foremost with Like Crazy. And for the reason is that there's a certain theme that I think fits in later on down the road. So, from what I was told, this song was written basically because he got into a bit of a dark spot and was kind of getting a little carried away with some of his hobbies. And if I'm incorrect on that, please let me know. But that's what I was told, is that basically he was kind of doing a little bit of spiraling, and he came out with this song Like Crazy. And I think one of the things that I love about the writing on this song in particular is something that I think a lot of people try not to do. And this is something that I feel like is very common inside of just a lot of interesting songs from BTS in general. But maybe Jimin is quite he's learned, I guess. But it's the fact that we have a song here that is extremely dark, but it's painted with a veneer to kind of be seen as like a fun or innocent thing, where in reality it's fairly kind of about the spiraling that he's going through. And I know that he has a lot to do with a lot of the writing on his music. I know that sometimes he co-writes as well. But I mean, obviously he's putting things in this for a reason. And I find it really interesting because, again, there's going to be some things that are coming around. But I remember first hearing the song, and I thought to myself, this seems so out of character for Jimin. And I remember trying to figure out why it felt like that for so long. And then by the time I even had any recollection of what is going on here, something else dropped that really shifted everything for me. That is when Set Me Free dropped. Now, bear in mind, I had been into the content for quite a bit of time at this point. And I think the thing that I find most interesting is this, again, did not feel like what I would expect Jimin to put out. But I think now, after having gone back and done the research for this video, something kind of clicks in my mind here. And I want to show this off.
I got a good time, yet time to get mine. Hammers me roll, hell is it night. I never stop, I never stop. Dancing with me, I never stop. Fuck you up, finally free. Oh yeah, 그때 멈춰서 not yet. 돌아보지 않아. Not yet. 날아가 버려 fly. Finally free. 더 이상 아파도 숨지 않아. 미치지 않기 위해 미치려는 걸. 지나간 나를 위해 손을 들어. Now set me free. Set me free.
This, to me, really turns out to be a bit of a turning point. Because the truth is, this is him explaining, at least to me, this is what it says, that basically what he had been doing is not something that he wants to keep doing. He decides that he wants to break free. And I think that there's actually even a line right here. I won't look back, fly away, butterfly. And then he follows it up with finally free. Now, the thing that I always find so interesting is that this song is very heavily auto-tuned. Something that I state fairly frequently on this channel. Not my favorite at all. But, again, when I say it serves the song, then I feel like that it's totally fine. This, in a way, does not just serve the song. It serves a story. The one thing that I love the most is that everything on this sounds really, really robotic and a little bit inhuman. And the one thing that doesn't is whenever he brings up the word free, thus making it such a powerful statement because he is free at that point. Even that right there, I won't hide anymore. There's a part of, one thing that I love is just knowing that he feels like he doesn't want to hide whatever he's going through. He's willing to be open about it. And the one thing that I love is right there, when he hits this spot right here, it comes in with all this brass, like a celebration, like that breakthrough. And in fact, I'd actually dare even say that the choreography for this is very indicative of that message in of itself. The fact that a lot of it's just really bombastic, and the throwing up of hands and the bouncing around, and then finally at the end he runs through the crowd right there, symbolizing that. It's a really interesting thing. And yet I feel like at this point it's because I think he is still in this process of evolving that's really getting him to the point where I feel like what I know Jimin as. And that's this right here. This song, which ultimately actually made me cry the first time I heard it.
때론 넘어져 울기도 하고 서로의 어깨를 토닥여주고 눈물로 겨울 저 바라보며 서로의 이름을 불러줬지 6월 13일 그날부터 오늘의 지금까지 너와 나 Even if you're not here 같은 자리에 always Don't have to worry now.
I think one thing that really hits home for me about this song still is because, and I brought this up in the very first video, I wasn't here for a lot of these moments. I wasn't here for when they were receiving hate. I know that Jimin is really hard on himself, and I wasn't here when he was getting backlash for the voice cracks, and I wasn't here for, you know, being able to help support. And the thing that I find so interesting about this song, and this is what I say is truly a masterpiece of songwriting, is if you can make people feel like they were there, like they had never not been part of the fandom. That's what this song did. And I remember thinking to myself, I felt like it was just an injection where all of the experiences that BTS had and Jimin himself was just quick shotted into my arm. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't think I've ever felt that before in music.
잠시 손을 놓지만 작은 춤표일 뿐인걸 Just call my name out loud 다시 보랏빛 물들 그날 Cause anytime you want me I'll be right here where you call me I'll be
And the thing that I love about this song is that it still feels happy. I feel like that there is a lot of people who are obviously not as popular, but are in similar situations of going into military, or maybe the group that they're in is breaking up, that just when they write, you know, like a song like this, a lot of times I feel like they're so happy that it seems fake, or they are sad. And I feel like that for me personally, this strikes a really nice chord of just knowing that even if BTS were to stop, say they decided to call it a day and retire, this song serves as a kind of a beckoning point that lets you know that even if they weren't making music, that they were still there. And you know, honestly, like, I haven't really heard a ton of fan songs. Some of the ones that I have heard, I remember just saying to myself, this is just really kind of sad. But when I heard this, I just remember thinking to myself, I really do feel like that he is here always. And obviously we know that they are coming up on the end of their enlistments, and I find that this little collection of songs and words that he writes for the fans is very indicative of another thing that I think is really the biggest telling of what I love most about Jimin. And this is where I start to get to my own personal vision of Jimin. And that is somebody who is incredibly empathetic. It's a weird thing. The moment that I realized that maybe my bias is Jimin. And the reason why I felt like that was actually when he did the interview with him and Namjoon. And I remember just Namjoon wanted to talk to Jimin. And he just talks about how, speaking of all the members, that he was the one who that he felt like was most qualified and best at handling emotional situations. And I know that it's pretty well known that Jimin is pretty much the first person that always is there to comfort any of the members when they're feeling down. He's the first that really gets a beat on when people are feeling down. And I think that that's what this starts to show.
I say, oh, oh, 더 행복하길 바래요. 난 넘어질 때면 내게 계속 내밀어주던 you. I say, oh.
I feel like, to me personally, Jimin might be, in a lot of sense, the most emotionally intimate idol. There's been very few people that I've found that has really been able to strike the emotional chords like Jimin. And I think because of the fact that he is so empathetic and is able to get that beat that we see even, the other members talk about, that he truly just ends up being able to convey that into his music. And I find it interesting because the fact is like, one thing that personally I find really hard, especially as of recently in terms of writing music, it's been very hard to convey emotion. And so when I started to go through and study for this video, I just remember thinking to myself, I need to be more like Jimin and just understand the emotional beats that I need to take. And he's so good at that.
Oh, 이제 내가 잡아줄게요. 울고 싶을 때면 넘어지지는 않도록.
And I think when I say that he's the most emotionally intimate, I think it's because, especially like this music, right? That I feel like that when he writes a song like this, obviously this being for ARMY, I find it so endearing that the first thing that he wants to do is write a song that is just him and a guitar. It just makes you feel like that it's just a one-on-one experience. That to me is a very, very difficult thing to pull off, but he does. And the fact of the matter is that when he does this, it's hard not to be able to fully grasp. This is what he wants you to know. And it's really quite an impressive feat to be able to write like this. And I just love it because this is honestly like the kind of music that I like to write anyway. It's just you and the guitar and, your feelings. You're belting out what you're feeling. And honestly, I don't know how he's doing this. And he's not crying. I would be a bawling mess. And again, he's okay with expressing those self-doubts and those doubts that he has in general, those concerns. I find it just incredible that he is able to get that to be pulled off, because that is not an easy task by any means.
Say, oh, 여러분을 위한 하모니. I say love. 자 이제 소개할게. 시작된 건 6월 12일. 행복의 선물 하나. 전하지 못한 말 숨겨왔던 너의 줄 거야 Just for you 더는 고민하지 마 우리가 함께니까 솔직해져 봐 Let's go I love you babe 다가갈게 너에게 I love you babe Yes or I want you babe
Now, the last thing that I feel like that I want to talk about when it comes to Jimin as a musician and his writing style is one that is deeply connected to him as a person. To me, one of the things that I love most about his music writing a lot of times is that he wants to still include everybody. The feeling of inclusiveness that he grabs and just holds on to no matter who it is. And honestly, when I found out who Loco was, I was floored. And I just remember thinking to myself, of course Jimin would do this. And the fact that he just would include all these people in this video to do this is so on brand.
I wanna hold your hand I want you babe Yeah, let's go 반대로 fade away 매일이 새롭게 이름 부를 테니 너는 편하기만 해줘 우리가 맞춰 잼해 느낀 대로 계속해 바로 앞에서 말 못해도 널 위해서 made a bed
And I think that the one thing that's really interesting is just the fact is that this is truly what he wants to do. That is his goal in songwriting. And the funny thing is, as somebody who is a chronic people pleaser, I totally get it. And I wish that I could handle it as well as Jimin did, but I absolutely just know that I fail at that so hard. And, you know, the funny thing is like, I kind of joke when I say this, but fairly often in the comments, I'll always say like, oh, I want to be one of the members, you know, I'll insert BTS member here. Like, oh, I want to be Jimin when I grow up. And funny enough, I actually think I'm older than Jimin, but, you know, in a sense, the truth is that I want to strive to be somebody like that still, even now. Someone who is compassionate, someone who's empathetic, someone who has that emotional beat down, and be able to understand when and where to do what you need to do for other people in a really emotionally intelligent way. Now, before I end all this, the one thing that I have to say, again, that is my favorite thing about his writing style in general. Like I said, it is his journalistic styling. Now we're getting through here, and we're to a very happy place, right? And I think Smeraldo Garden is a beautiful way to emphasize that he clearly is in a better state. When it comes to a journalistic side of things, and I mean like a journal, not like journalism, this song right here, Who, to me is almost identical in a lot of ways to the very first song which we showed here. It is extremely similar to that of Like Crazy in a lot of senses. Now, the thing, it might not be a one for one, but the thing that I think is really interesting is the fact that, to me, I feel like Who and Like Crazy is similar enough where I feel like that this is like him rounding off and being like, putting the cap on. This is where I'm at now. This is where I feel. And even still, there's still some stuff that he wants to accomplish. And I think that that's a really interesting thing. For me, the one thing that I have to say, aside from the empathy that Jimin just shows time and time again, even in his music, and the journalist part, you know, the journal part of his music that I've grown really fond of, the one thing that I really love about his songwriting is the fact is that he knows that there is always more to learn. And I say this a lot in the comments, and maybe sometimes it might even get a little annoying when I respond like this, but it's the truth. And that is that when it comes to being a musician, especially when you think you've learned it all, you have, because you are unwilling to allow yourself to continue to grow. The fact is, we know he said this. He knows that he went back to the drawing board and decided to take lessons again and relearn everything in a proper sense. And he didn't have to do that. He didn't. He could have just kept being Jimin from BTS. But that crave of always wanting to improve and be that person is one of the things that I find so admirable. So I think all in all, the most important thing is that his music is a reflection of himself. Someone who is extremely hardworking, somebody who is extremely caring and emotionally intelligent, and someone who always sees the better in people and wants to be the help for others. And then the thing that I love most is knowing that when he is struggling, he can say what he wants to say. And then the next thing on top of it all, I feel like that is the most important, is that he truly is authentic. And I feel like that out of a lot of the music that we hear nowadays, that's getting less and less. And there's nothing that, like I said, I want to be Jimin when I grow up, because when I listen to his music, when I see how he acts around others, and it's all just indicative of somebody who is somebody that is worth, I think, giving that. And again, the beautiful thing is I could talk about all this personally, about how much he is so nice to everybody else, and you could be like, yeah, that's in his music. I really feel like that, and that's one of the most beautiful things. So for me, I think that this has probably been one of the most impactful things on my own writing, is because I realize of the emotion and the authenticity that I need to try and fit into my own writing style. I always get wrapped up in just the old cliches of me trying to dig for those old school sounding emo metal songs that I grew up with and still listen to 20 years later, and realize that, you know what, maybe I do need to take more into account, and Jimin is a very good bar for me to set myself at for that. And for that reason, I love his writing style. His musical styling has absolutely grown on me. So anyway, thank you all so much. I hope this didn't seem too long-winded. This has just been kind of me pouring out how I feel about his music and his writing style, and honestly his work ethic as well, is all part and the culmination of everything that we've talked about today. So I hope that you like this, and we will see you in the next video. Bye, Victus.